Under a sky heavy with clouds and a fan base heavy with doubt, the Dallas Cowboys find themselves not simply licking the wounds of a single defeat, but unraveling in slow motion, before the eyes of the league. And while coaches, executives, and players may cling to fragments of optimism or dress their concerns with polite words for the cameras, the truth, laid bare in film study and statistics, in the groans of fans who have seen this movie before, is that this team has stumbled into a chasm of its own making, a pit dug by porous defense, compounded by injuries, and deepened by the cruel rhythm of an unforgiving schedule. Because when you peel away the superficial explanations, the dropped passes, the unlucky flags, the unfortunate bounces, what you are left with is a franchise once heralded for its star, now wobbling on the brink of another lost season. And the evidence is scattered everywhere. CeeDee Lamb, the bright spark of an offense too often asked to shoulder the load alone, wakes to an ankle swollen with the kind of sprain that doctors label high, a term that in NFL circles carries weight heavier than its syllables suggest. For a high ankle sprain rarely heals quickly, rarely allows for bursts off the line or sharp cuts in the secondary. And while the Cowboys insist this is perhaps a low-grade variant, that hope is as fragile as the ligaments themselves, because anyone who has tracked these injuries across seasons knows that 4 to 6 weeks is not merely a guess, but a pattern, and patterns rarely break just because Jerry Jones wants them to. Yet Lamb's plight is but a subplot in a saga growing darker with every defensive snap, because here lies the real horror. This Dallas defense, entrusted to Matt Eberflus's bend but don't break philosophy, has bent so thoroughly it is breaking records of futility, becoming a unit that does not bend like reeds in a storm, but collapses like rotted wood in the hands of journeyman quarterbacks, who against Dallas suddenly appear reborn. And if you think that is exaggeration, just look at the ledger. Against the Cowboys, the Giants looked like juggernauts, racking up 506 yards, 37 points, and 4 touchdowns. But outside that game, they have been toothless, managing only 15 points in 2 other contests combined, a discrepancy so severe it borders on indictment. Against the Cowboys, Russell Wilson resembled the Wilson of his Seattle prime, carving the secondary with yardage he has not sniffed in years. But against Washington and Kansas City, he disintegrated into the ghostly shell that Denver has come to know. Against the Cowboys, Caleb Williams, barely beginning his NFL journey, looked like a prodigy, a phenom arriving on schedule. Yet the suspicion lingers that Dallas gifted him the stage more than his own development did, and had lightning not halted the Philadelphia game, the Eagles too might have feasted until the scoreboard broke. And so the theme emerges with cruel clarity. The Cowboys do not stop anyone, not consistently, not in the air, not when it matters, because when the statistics are tallied, they scream louder than the pundits. 31st in yards per play allowed, 31st in yards per game, 31st in EPA per play, bleeding nearly 9 yards every time an opponent dares to throw, yielding third downs at a staggering clip of nearly 54%, surrendering the field not in inches but in acres, and all this despite boasting a run defense that has, ironically, held firm, ranking top 10 in yards per carry, a minor consolation that feels like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house whose foundation has already crumbled. For what does it matter if you stonewall running backs when quarterbacks are walking untouched into first downs with every drop back, every sideline throw, every soft cushion offered by Eberflus's zones? Here lies the philosophical failure. Bend but don't break cannot coexist with explosive plays. It cannot survive flea flickers that bite defenders in the ribs, cannot sustain when man coverage collapses just as easily, and it cannot excuse a sack rate of 3.8%. A pressure time of nearly 3 seconds per dropback, a pass rush that vanishes the moment Micah Parsons is not on the field. The math is merciless. One elite edge rusher, no matter how transcendent, cannot replace a coherent scheme. Parsons is a force of nature. When he's present, when he's paired with disciplined alignment and purposeful disguise, offenses hesitate. But genius alone is not architecture. It is a single beam in a house that needs walls and a roof. Remove the walls and the roof, and that beam becomes a solitary, heroic stick against a storm. It bends, it groans. It cannot hold back the flood forever. And yet, The franchise clings to the hope of Parsons' return as if it were salvation itself. Hope is a useful thing. It keeps fans in their seats. It keeps broadcasters chirping and owners invested. But hope does not cover safeties beaten deep, cannot erase linebackers out of position, cannot turn missed tackles into stops, cannot retrofit poor angles into sound fundamentals overnight. The defense's recurring peccadillos, wrong reads at the second level, misaligned responsibilities, a pass rush that only sings when called upon by proximity to Parsons, are not isolated mistakes. They are structural. They are symptoms of a coordinator whose blueprint appears brittle under the microscope of elite competition. So the comparison to 2020 feels less like media spin and more like prophecy. Then, too, the Cowboys stumbled from prime-time loss to fluky overtime win to humiliating NFC defeat. Then, too, they surrendered yards and points in historic fashion. Then, too, they carried the weight of an underperforming coordinator and the stench of a defense ranked among the worst in franchise history. Now, in 2025, the same script is being read again, line for line. The despair in the fan base is not fresh anger but an echo. The press conferences are not new theater, but a rerun. The calendar has not flipped so much as turned pages in the same book. What compounds the pain is the offense's enforced fragility. Stripped of star receivers, forced into shootouts every week, the Cowboys have become a team of high variance, capable of brilliant offensive outbursts, yet equally susceptible to sputtering under pressure when defensive lapses turn avalanche-like. Dak Prescott does what he can, but asking one quarterback to thread perfection through a sieve is asking for heroics to be a season-long plan. No team, no matter how talented, can sustain that level of flawless execution for 17 games. At some point, the margin tightens, mistakes compound, and variance becomes fate. Jerry Jones stands before microphones, stalwart and silver-haired, talking of fingers crossed and seasons not lost. The tone is defiant, almost ritual in its insistence that tomorrow is a different beast. But rhetoric and reality are different currencies. The avalanche of points surrendered, the ghost of past collapses, the weight of an approaching gauntlet, the Packers in prime time, the Commanders, the Broncos, the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Lions. These are not mere names on a schedule. They are deadlines, each one an interrogation of whether this roster can be remade on the fly or whether the current architecture is too fragile to support championship ambitions. Which forces the brutal questions. Do you trade draft capital to patch holes that look less like leaks and more like gaping craters? Trading future promise for present relief is a Faustian bargain. Immediate reinforcements might staunch the bleeding. But at what long-term cost? Draft capital is hope incarnate, young, cheap, and malleable. To spend it is to mortgage years that might be essential when the cap tightens and the team ages.